Shell types in Blitz. There's 4, technically 5, and I think we all know what they do in general. AP is your standard boy, HE does big damage, But what a lot of people don't know is the specifics and the interesting characteristics of a lot of the type of shells, which can really help you out in your battles and really help you clutch up those tight situations. So stick around for the next few minutes, I'll tell you everything there is to know about these shells, and I'll do it quicker than pan-tooth annoying wargaming. So AP, what is there to know? It's pretty much your everyman of shells. It does pretty much everything and it does it to a decent degree. So what are its advantages? Well, it has the second best shell velocity out of all the shells, which, you know, a nice thing to have, especially in your tank destroyers. It has the second best module damage, making AP pretty good for doing stuff like immobilizing and ammo racking and It's not affected by spaced armor that much, so it means you can shoot it through like the lower plate of a Super Pershing or through the cheeks of a Carnarvon Action 10. It will keep the majority of its penetrating power, but it still might not penetrate. It also has a feature not a lot of people know about called overmatching. So basically what this is if you have an armor plate, let's say 40mm thick, even if it's angled at 89.9999 degrees, if the caliber of your gun, and hence the shell, is over 3 times bigger than this, so 121mm or larger, it will overmatch this armor plate and it will go through, despite the fact that the effective armor on this could be 1000mm thick. It will always go through, and this is a characteristic unique to AP and APCR, which is extremely useful against lights and medium side scraping. And sadly, this is the reason why a grill can't side scrape, though I think it personally can. AP also has a nice factor called normalization, which means that when it hits an armor plate, it moves 5 degrees towards the normal, which reduces the effective armor, as you can see here, which is very nice for penetrating those angled targets. And AP tends to be the standard round on tanks, so it often is very cheap, so it's very nice to use. So let's move on to its disadvantages. AP has the second worst penetration loss over distance, but this is highlighted in the armor, so you'll be able to tell before you shoot. This is not something you really need to worry about as long as you can aim at the grey areas. It has the smallest ricochet angles, meaning the shell will just bounce right off the armor and not even attempt to penetrate as long as it strikes the armor at 70 degrees or more. So this is why you cannot hit targets that are extremely side scraping. And AP often comes with average penetration, but this is due to its nature of being the standard round on many tanks, and this is just, you know, on Japanese TDs, for example, it has the highest penetration in the game, so, you know, you just take it as it comes. Now moving on to APCR, which has one huge advantage, and that is it has the best shell velocity amongst all shells, dwarfing AP, Heat, HE, dwarfing all of them. It has great shell velocity, and if you're shooting across the map, you will feel very happy to be shooting APCR. Very much like AP, it is also not affected by spaced armor that much, which again is quite nice for shooting through multiple layers of plates like on the front of an IS-3. Also possesses the overmatch mechanic, which I just outlined with AP, which again is very helpful for overmatching side scraping things, and the tops of turrets and the tops of the chassis of tanks. It also comes with a normalization of 2 degrees, but again, like I previously outlined, which again is quite nice against taking out extremely angled plates as long as your shell does not ricochet. Its disadvantages are that it has the worst module damage, so if you're looking for a fire and you're shooting APCR, get out of here. It has the worst penetration drop off over distance, however its penetration will never fall below that of its AP shell on the same tank, and this increased drop off does not occur if APCR is the standard round, so like on your tier 10 mediums or certain tanks and lower down in the tech tree. APCR also ricochets at 70 degrees, very much like AP, and it tends to be more expensive, especially at the lower tiers, because it is usually a premium round. Now moving on to Heat, sometimes considered the best shell, but as we're about to see, maybe not. Its advantages are that it has no penetration loss over distance, very much unlike AP and APCR. So if you can penetrate a mouse's lower plate with Heat at 2 meters, you can penetrate it at 2000 meters. It ricochets at 85 degrees, so that means that your opponents will have to side scrape extremely hard for them to ricochet Heat shells off them, and it always has the highest penetration amongst all shells on a tank, as it is always the premium ammo, and when it's not, it's just not there, so you will always have the highest chance of penetration with this. However, its disadvantages are it has the second worst shell velocity, second only to HE, and it cannot overmatch stuff, so against really well side scraping things, Heat is useless. It has no normalization, so again against those well armored plates that you could potentially penetrate with AP or APCR, Heat is not not going to help you. It has the second worst module damage. However, in my experience, it seems to be fairly good at tracking people as long as you can shoot the drive sprocket of the front drive wheel. So, I don't know, make of that what you will. And it leads penetration when travelling through spaced armour or any object such as a box or a wall, meaning that it can go through the first layer just fine, but it will lose all of its penetrating capacity and just turn into a really bad AP round after that. So chances are it won't penetrate or it will just ricochet. And finally, HE or HESH on British vehicles. It has a lot of advantages as it is the most unique type of shell. It has a splash radius which allows you to kill 2 tanks with 1 shot, like here. It very rarely happens, but if it does, it can be very helpful, especially if you're driving something like a 183 or a Jagd 100 and you have that long reload. It has the highest damage amongst all shells, so if you can shoot HE, there are a lot of things you can HE in the game, your DPM will jump up by like 50%. Another very useful thing is it does not need to penetrate to 2 damage, meaning you can shoot the upper plate of lots and lots of heavies, you can shoot their sides at 89 degrees and it will still do consistent amounts of damage, ranging from between a quarter and half of the damage that your AP would do unless it hits an extremely armoured plate. It has the best module damage out of the game. If you've ever HE'd the back of an RHM or Waffles turret, you will know just how many modules and crew members get injured in that explosion. And that is because HE is an explosion, which as you can imagine, is quite damaging. It cannot ricochet, again, very useful for shooting the side of side-scraping targets and taking off little chunks of their health when APCR, heat could not penetrate. HE is always the cheapest shell on a tank, which again, quite useful, unless it is a high-tier British tank and it is HESH, because HESH, even when it's not a premium round, is always more expensive than its standard round counterpart, and HE always has no penetration drop-off over distance, because its penetration power is based on its explosion rather than its kinetic energy. Like how on AP and APCR, their penetration is based on their velocity, but with heat and HE, it is based on their explosive capabilities. Disadvantages of HE, the main one, it's low penetration. You will not penetrate the front of a lot of vehicles in the game with HE unless you are in a 183. It has the worst shell velocity amongst all things, so sniping with HE is a nightmare, and that is why a lot of people do not risk shooting HE at ranges above 200 meters. It detonates on the first object it encounters, whether that be armor, tracks, or a wall. Much like heat, you cannot shoot through a wall and penetrate as it just explodes on the wall because it doesn't hit the tank. And HE can also not overmatch as it just detonates and doesn't have a chance to go through the armor. So there you have it. That's all the information in the game, I think, on all 4 shell types. Hopefully you learned something. I sure know I did, researching stuff for this video. So maybe, if you did, you maybe could leave a like, you maybe could subscribe, and if you really feel like doing it, maybe comment, So thank you all very much for watching, and I hope I will speak to you soon.